So I'm Jez, and I think there's always a moment at these things when you're kind of looking at the person standing in front of you and going, well, who are you and why are you talking to me? So I just want to sort of set the context for me a bit. I've worked in Agile for about 10 years, I suppose, and always worked kind of at the intersection between Agile and communications. If you ever saw the Save BBC Six Music consultation when they talked about closing Six Music, I was the product owner for that website, so it became the biggest public engagement thing ever done in the UK online at that point. Which took us by surprise. We weren't even expecting it to be. But yeah, so I've kind of sat on that sort of Agile communications boundary. And that's kind of how I came to Agile marketing. And I also came to Agile marketing because over the last 2 years, I've done a master's at Bristol University in strategy, change and leadership, a bit of a grand title, but basically I got to look at Agile from leadership perspectives and strategy perspectives and organisational change perspectives. And the bit that really grabbed me was actually how that relates then to my marketing and communications kind of work. So I wrote my thesis on Agile marketing and how that works. And like any good student, rather than actually writing my thesis, I looked for something else to do instead. So I wrote this, which is a book. It's version 1 of a book on Agile marketing. And it's loads more fun writing a book than it is writing a thesis. You don't have to back up your arguments, don't have to footnote anything. You can say what you like. And everyone goes, yeah, that's in a book. It must be true. So yeah, it's a version 1. It's a work in progress. But that's kind of what I'm talking about tonight, really, is how marketing currently exists at the moment, what kind of culture it is. I think even if you're from a software development background, there's something interesting to know what the marketing team is thinking, how they are seeing the world, which is very, very different, I think, to how software developers see the world. Then I want to kind of look at why marketing might actually need Agile. I think it massively does, and I think marketers are starting to notice it, but they're not really sure what's going on. It's all a bit scary for them. And then look at some of the cultural problems. There are huge cultural problems with this, and some of them are kind of really odd around how marketers react to Agile concepts, Agile principles, the Agile manifesto, stuff like that. So I want to start with this. This, if you're a marketer, is what Agile marketing is. And I'm not even saying this generally, this literally here is Agile marketing. It's the thing that started the whole conversation. Basically, I think it was the 2013 Super Bowl in America. There was a power cut and everyone, a bit of a panic because it's a Super Bowl and the power's gone out, what do you do? And Oreo got this out, I think within about 20 minutes on Twitter. And it was a piece of content that responded in real time to what was happening in the power cut. And everyone in marketing went absolutely crazy about it because that's Agile marketing. Because obviously all Agile is just being a bit quicker, and that there's nothing else to it, obviously. And this really bugged me because it's like, well, Agile is so much more than that. Agile is more than just doing things a bit quicker. You could have just war roomed what might happen and got that bit of content ready a year in advance and gone, well, if there's a power cut, we'll do this. Not necessarily anything to do with Agile at all. But if you're a marketer, you see this as Agile marketing, as doing stuff more quickly in response to real-time events. There was another one that happened, I think this was last year, when Jeremy Clarkson may or may not have punched somebody. Snickers got this out, and it's clever. Jeremy Clarkson, you may want to have some of these on the set next time you're hungry. And they got this out really, really quickly, and it got retweeted over 5,000 times, over nearly 4,000 favourites. It kind of did well. But again, is it really Agile? Where's the manifesto in that? Where's any Agile principles in that? It's just kind of a photo of a box of Snickers. It's not really that interesting. So kind of what I want to do is look at where marketing is coming from, how marketing is as an industry at the moment, and then how Agile might impact on it. So marketing basically, people have been marketing for thousands of years. Whilst there's been stuff to sell and there's people to buy it, marketing has kind of existed. But the modern practice of marketing is actually a post-war thing. There kind of weren't marketers. Even Mad Men, it's kind of very much of its time. That's a marketing kind of, as we currently understand it, started to happen. And it started to happen alongside a lot of the big development projects that were going on, construction projects post-war, so the space race, things like that. And those really, really popularised waterfall, really, really popularised, really planned project management. And I really suspect, and I need to look into it further to kind of prove it, I really suspect that then came over into marketing as well. Marketing, as it was evolving, as we currently understand it, at the same time as this stuff, picked up a lot of those waterfall tendencies, picked up a lot of that thinking, and became very, very kind of process heavy. And for me, this is really well exemplified by the fact that in marketing, there's a whole career path you can do as a planner. There are people called planners, and they do nothing but write plans, and then they give other people those plans, and they follow those plans. And as an Agile person coming into this, it drove me mad. I was like, why are we spending loads of time and loads of money on planning? It's a huge thing. And nothing exemplifies marketing better, I think, at the moment than the fact that planning is a huge part of marketing. You don't get any Agile marketers at the moment. You just get lots and lots of marketing planners, media planners, and so forth. And also marketing is predicated around this, the big idea. If you talk to a marketer and talk about the big idea, they really like them. And the big idea is something you have up front. When you're running a campaign, the first thing you do is work out the big idea for the campaign. And then everything you do in the campaign falls out of that big idea and fits into it. So if the big idea is completely wrong, you just kind of carry on with the campaign anyway, and then it just kind of doesn't work, and it's a bit of a shame. And again, I really struggled with that, because I was like, well, actually, what if we have loads and loads of ideas, and we test them in really small ways, and we pick the best ones, and we incrementally work towards a solution? No, just big idea, all about the big idea. And awards, really, really indicative, I think, of the way marketing is at the moment. I've never seen an industry with so many different awards you can win. They love awards. Everyone always wins awards and enters awards and so forth. They go to Cannes in France for one big set of awards everyone loves. You can win a pencil. Getting one of those pencils is a big deal if you're a marketer, it really is. Or the Marketing Society kind of circular thing. That's not quite as big a deal, I don't think, as a pencil. But it's really interesting because for me and we'll come on to this again in a bit, but it is really indicative of the fact that this isn't about data. Marketing isn't necessarily about results. It's about personal opinion. It's about going, I won an award. My peers thought I was good. The awards aren't necessarily judged on how much did you sell, how much stuff did you shift, how much opinion did you change. It's just, did the panel of judges think what you did was great, was really, really good. And there's a LinkedIn page, which is kind of amusing me and bugging me at the moment in the same time. It's called Brilliant Ads. And every day they post a picture of a brilliant ad, and loads of marketers leave comments, that's a brilliant ad, awesome. No mention whatsoever of how much that ad sold, how much opinion that changed, the impact the ad had. You see it a lot as well in some of the marketing magazines when they will do campaign of the week. They'll have this week's campaign that we're celebrating is this. And it's generally a campaign that's just gone live. And it's like, how do you know that's a good campaign? It's not done anything yet. It's been live a day. It might be a rubbish campaign. Come back to the campaign in 12 weeks' time and go, well, what did it sell? What did it do? Not really interested in that. The awards are based on personal opinion. The brilliant ads are based on personal opinion. And for me, that's really kind of anti the way I've always experienced Agile, where it's like, well, we have this opinion, but let's test it. Let's do a test of this. Let's see if our opinion is right. Let's be open to changing it and iterating it and evolving it as we go along, rather than just going, let's have a big idea. Everyone else thinks that's brilliant. It's going to win awards, superb, and then, it doesn't actually sell anything. And I think it kind of comes down to this fact, which is very true, and no one quite knows who said it. It may have been John Wanamaker, may have been Viscount Leverhulme, but basically half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And that's been really true of marketing and advertising for a long time. You kind of know stuff happens as a result of it. You need to do it. Things get better if you do. But you don't really know which bit where is doing what. And when you're in that kind of situation, all you've got is personal opinion. I don't really blame marketers for having this approach of relying on personal opinion, because actually, if you haven't got any data, if you haven't got any knowledge, you've just got, well, I think that's good and that's not good. And if that person who thinks it's good was right last time, then probably they're right this time. And you just kind of, it's a necessary way it's evolved. And this is kind of, for me, a typical marketing thing. And has anyone seen the Underpant Gnomes on South Park? It's a brilliant episode of South Park where they have this business model where the first part of the business model is to steal underpants, the second is a load of question marks, and the third is profit. And it became a bit of an internet meme of sort of do something, question marks, profit. And that's, for me, is kind of the way marketing has actually been for quite a long time. You kind of do all the things, you plan it, you have the big idea, you build the creative, plan the media, buy the media, launch the campaign, stuff happens out there in the real world, and then profit comes back, and that's great. And as long as profit's coming back, it kind of doesn't matter what stuff is happening. But again, for me, I kind of twitch at that stuff. It's like, well, we could know, we should be getting into this, we should be going, what's working better than what? How can we evolve and iterate and deal with this? So I kind of want to look at why marketing needs Agile. That's what marketing is at the moment in a kind of nutshell. And I'm sure there's some marketers who disagree with me about it, but that's kind of my experience of what I've seen of it over the last 10, 15 years or so. And for me, one really interesting thing around marketing is that actually it didn't change a lot for a long time. So 1624, this is in the UK, probably different around the world, but in 1624 was the first press advert in the UK. It wasn't until 1867 we got something new, which was billboards at the side of the road. We got billboards sort of interrupting our journeys to work. Only in 1955 we got TV advertising, 1973 radio advertising. So kind of not a lot changed, and it was quite predictable, it's quite stable. Once you'd had press advertising that long, once you had billboards that long, you could kind of go, well, we know this works and this doesn't work. We've had a long time to really experiment and test this sort of stuff. Not that that's being done formally, but you kind of say, well, I know how to do billboards because it goes back an awfully long time and this is what works and what happens. But then in the last, say, 20 years, there's been an absolute explosion of channels. So 1994, we got digital display advertising and mass email marketing. 2002, Google PPC. 2003, LinkedIn. 2005, Facebook and YouTube. Feels weird. That's only just over 10 years since we got Facebook, and that was when it was literally tiny. And now it's just everything. Twitter 2006, 2010, Instagram, a whole load of new channels have emerged, and marketers have had to kind of keep up with that and adapt to that and go, well, how do we deal with these channels? And they kind of don't know. It's all very uncertain. And where you get that uncertainty, for me, is where you start to say, well, actually, maybe Agile's quite good at this, because Agile's really good at dealing with emergent kind of uncertain environments. The other thing that's happened, well, there's many things that happen. Another thing that's happened is the change in the environment where people are consuming your marketing. So if you put a billboard up on the road, you know people are consuming that marketing when they're going past that billboard. Unless someone's taken a photo of it and shown it to them, which would be a bit weird, they are basically in that space. And if that space is usually a place people commute to and from work, you know people are kind of doing that. So you know that's the environment. Or you put a TV ad on, you put it on a Saturday evening, you could be pretty sure at the time that people would be sitting in their living room, probably with some members of their family, and you knew what your target audience was, you knew what their behaviour would be, and it's all quite stable and predictable. But now, thanks to mobile, you really don't know where people are. That's got hugely more complex and uncertain as well. The environment where people are consuming your marketing could be anywhere. They could be on the bus reading the newspaper with a kid screaming next to them, and your advert appears and disappears and something else happens, and anything could be going on. You have a huge amount of uncertainty and complexity now in the environments where marketing is being consumed, compared with when previously there was a billboard or there was a TV ad or there was a radio ad, and that was that. Really, really fascinating thing I think as well is people talk a lot about social media, and there's an awful lot of hype around social media in marketing, and it's not necessarily that great. But it's really interesting that consumers can now talk back to you in really, really public ways that can go really, really big. Previously, as an organisation, if you're marketing something, someone could phone you up and have a go at you, they could come into your shop and have a go at you, they could write you a letter. It's all quite small scale, it's not really going to go any further. Now, if you do something wrong, it can blow up, and suddenly that message of you're doing something wrong, that brand damaging stuff, is spreading all over the web in ways you can't predict. And again, that's a huge amount of complexity and uncertainty that you genuinely just can't predict. You kind of have to be ready for it in case it does happen. Another really fascinating thing I think is that in advertising and marketing, there are people called sort of media buyers. So you produce an advert, but once you produce that advert, all that advert is a piece of paper on your desk or a virtual thing on your computer. You have to buy some media to get that to people. So a media buyer would buy the advertising slot on TV, or they would buy that half page in a newspaper that your advert goes on. So media buyers, are kind of important people. You can't get your advert seen and your marketing seen without media buyers. But now, thanks to social media, your customers have become your media suppliers, because they could put a tweet out and it could go viral, it could go all over the internet, and suddenly they're taking your message and promoting it for you and sharing it for you for no money, basically, in a way that never used to happen. It used to be if you didn't have media buyers, no one would hear about you. Now, you could do something really, really stupid and everyone would hear about you and you needn't do any media at all. So it's kind of flipped that relationship on its head. Previously, you had stuff and you gave it to people and they consumed it. Now they're distributing it for you and potentially changing it and playing it back to you. And again, huge amounts of complexity and uncertainty. Data is a really interesting one. I think for a short time, marketers got really excited about data, and some marketers still are excited about data. Others of them are going, there's just too much. This is just a couple of screenshots of a Facebook page and just some of the huge amounts of data you can get out of it. And yes, it's potentially really, really interesting to see in fine-grained detail how everyone's behaving. But actually, I think that's adding to the complexity. That's making things an awful lot more complex because you've got so much data. How do you know which bits are important? How do you know what to do with it? Can you really be on top of it every hour, every day? You probably can't. Actually, this has made things an awful lot more complex as well. And this was a great one from last year. Literally, I think it was a year ago this month, or maybe even this week. I was working at a place and someone came up to me and said, "You heard of Meerkat?" And I was like, things that I've seen on TV and stuff. I don't know. It's a platform you can stream video live through Twitter using Meerkat. How do we use it in our marketing? And I was like, I don't know, but let's find out. It sounds really, really interesting. So we started looking into Meerkat, spent a few days doing that, looked at some options for it, and then literally a week later, Twitter came out with Periscope, which was exactly the same thing, but Twitter had bought it and Twitter were promoting it. And suddenly everyone went, forget Meerkat, it doesn't matter anymore, it's all about Periscope. And that was just within the space of a week. And if you think back to how those channels changed previously, 1624, press advertising, and then nothing till billboards, suddenly it's changing week on week. Platforms are emerging and disappearing and changing. And again, that's hugely complex, and marketers are kind of really racing to keep up with it, and it always changes, and you're never quite sure what's going on with it. And for me, that Meerkat Periscope thing was just perfect. In the space of a week, a platform rose and then disappeared. Meerkat were quite clever, actually, in the way they did their IPO. I think they got a bunch of money out of it before Twitter announced it, but it was really, really fast-paced. So should marketing be using Agile? And it's interesting, this is the State of Scrum survey, 2015 one, and if you looked at places other than IT using Scrum, sales and marketing was there on 26%. That's not to say 26% of sales and marketing people are using Scrum. Just of those people who replied to the survey who knew of a place that were using Scrum in an environment other than IT, 26% said sales and marketing. So it's not massive, but it's there, it's happening. People are using Scrum in sales and marketing. That Agile thing is taking off a bit. There was also an Agile marketing manifesto produced, which is very similar to the Agile manifesto. But yeah, little bits are popping up here and there. It's kind of happening already. But for me, the really interesting thing, the problem is, to a degree, that it's the manifesto for Agile software development. This isn't the manifesto for Agile marketing development or product development. It kind of says software. And actually, the manifesto, I don't think is too bad at this, because it doesn't really say software too often. It's the manifesto for Agile software development. It says working software over comprehensive documentation. But apart from that, it's kind of agnostic. It doesn't have to be about software. But it's interesting, because it's like, well, if this was created for software as a mindset, how, when you lay that over marketing and the current ways marketing exists, how does it settle? How does it work? What are the points of tension and stuff? And those are the bits I've been kind of working through in the book, and that's why I enjoyed writing the book, because I could kind of just have loads of ideas and think about this rather than having to sort of reference it all necessarily. So I think the first point to make is that sometimes marketing is just software development. This is from Bristol last year, where you had Shaun the Sheep. I think it was last year. They do kind of one every year. But Aardman had a little app. There were various statues of Shaun the Sheep around the city, and you could use the app to go and scan or put in the number of the different sheep, and it would let you track which ones you'd seen. It would do really fun things. The guy I was working with was using it. It would let you track who got a certain number of Shauns in the fastest time. It would track all sorts of interesting stuff. And fundamentally, that was a software development project that was used for marketing. There's complete synergy between software and marketing, basically. So it's kind of an obvious thing to say, but in some instances now, software development and marketing are the same thing. They're completely in the same sector. But that's kind of one small niche area. That's not particularly common necessarily. For me, the more interesting stuff is where you get tensions around things like websites and code versus kind of collateral and assets and copy and beautiful images and so forth. Because I think what's happened, certainly in some organisations, is that when websites came along, marketers didn't really know what it was, didn't really care about it. It's a bit of a weird, geeky, techie thing over there, and kind of left it alone. And then occasionally they realised that people were looking at these websites that were kind of interesting, maybe we should do something with them. So they would email off or hand over, or however they'd supply it, a whole bunch of assets, images, display ads, whatever they would be, to the web people and say, right, we're the marketing team, you put these live on the website because, you know, we're marketing and that's what we do. And we control the brand identity and we control the typeface and all that stuff. So you just do what we tell you, you odd techie people, and then they run away and go and do marketing stuff again. But I think the interesting thing that's happened there is you're now getting tensions between developers and marketing people, because developers are rightly going, well, actually, we know more about this than you do. We've got much better access to the data. We understand the data a lot better. We can run A/B tests really, really quickly and turn stuff around really quickly. And if we have to wait for you to have a beautiful brand identity meeting and a big idea and a plan and stuff before we can start doing stuff, actually, that's really getting in our way. And we're using Agile already. We just want to get on with stuff and start delivering value. So you're getting this kind of fight over who actually owns the marketing now. Do the web people own the marketing? Should they own the marketing? Or should the marketing department still have absolute control over it? I kind of come down on the side of the web people quite often, which doesn't make me popular in marketing necessarily, but they've got closer access to the data. They can do stuff more quickly and easily. But the really interesting thing, I think, the potential for fixing this obviously lies in Agile with cross-functional teams. Why are marketing and developers sitting apart from each other? Why shouldn't they start merging? Be a bit weird. I'm not sure they know how to talk to each other necessarily if you just put them all in a room and left them to get on with it. But for me, that's a really good answer for it. Marketers need to adopt Agile so they can actually start communicating better with these developers. And the other point about some of this is the Agile Manifesto talks about working software over comprehensive documentation. It's a challenge for marketing because actually in marketing, documentation is your output. A poster is your output, a leaflet is your output. Comprehensive documentation is kind of what you want sometimes because that's your marketing campaign, is producing lots of comprehensive documentation. And how some of the basic sort of agile practices or Scrum practices, how do you unit test a poster? How do you can't say we're shipping this and it's tested and it works and it passed and we can therefore ship it, because you kind of can't, it's just a poster. So yeah, you get a really interesting tension of some of these practices. I don't think anyone's kind of worked that stuff through yet that I've seen. Some of the more software development practices, how you would then implement them into marketing. The other really interesting bit, don't you think about programmatic display advertising? It's basically the adverts you see on websites. It used to be, when this first started, that someone would buy a slot on a website, just like they'd buy a slot in a newspaper and own it for a day or for a week or whatever, their advert would be there. Now, those slots don't have anything in when you very first visit the page, but literally within milliseconds, it takes a read of who you are, generally because you're logged into Facebook at the same time and it scrapes your Facebook data. It takes a read of who you are. There's a bid goes on, an auction goes on between lots of different advertisers who've said we want to target you, you're the type of person that you are, and the one that wins the auction gets the ad appearing on the site. So everyone gets a different experience. When it happens within milliseconds, you wouldn't even notice it happening, but it's a massive industry at the moment. There's all sorts of issues with it. But fundamentally, that's now software doing media buying. It used to be that media buyers would go, well, if you want to reach these sorts of people, then we recommend you go for this newspaper here, and you do it in this way, blah, blah, and they would buy that media for you. Now with programmatic display advertising, software is making that decision in milliseconds. You don't need people anymore. So this is a really interesting collision, I think, between the technology and the marketing that used to happen and what should be happening. And the bit that bugged me with this was I took these screenshots last year just as I was writing up my thesis. And one of the things it gave me was, do you want to do a degree? It's like, no, I really don't. But for some reason, I must have been looking at the Bristol University website and it went, he's interested in universities. I'm really, really not. But Bristol and Bath Marketing Network, it picked that up for me as well, that I'm in Bristol, all sorts of stuff. So it's fascinating how that stuff works. And again, it's kind of marketing becoming software, software becoming marketing, that stuff colliding, and no one really working out how to deal with it. And another really interesting bit, I think, is around some of the questions Agile raises for the way marketing is currently done. So this is one of the John Lewis Christmas ads, and the John Lewis Christmas ad, if you work in marketing, is the biggest thing ever. Everyone else's Christmas. If you notice it at Christmas, the John Lewis one comes out, and then you'll notice other ones trying to be a bit John Lewis-y as well, because they want to be the John Lewis Christmas ad, but they're not the John Lewis Christmas ad. No one is the John Lewis Christmas ad. It's huge. But it's really interesting because obviously one thing in Agile and the manifesto is delivering value frequently. You know, you're just constantly shipping bits of incremental value. You can't ship a Christmas ad every month in January, February, March, April, May. You can't, there's no incremental, it's Christmas. If the John Lewis Christmas ad doesn't go live around the start of December or whenever it goes live, it's kind of missed its window. And it's very fixed time as well. You can't phone people up and go, really sorry, can Christmas be February this year? Because actually we've overrun slightly. You know, we couldn't really estimate properly at the start. We didn't know the most. You know the least about the project at the start of the project, so actually you've just misestimated here. It just has to happen at that point, which is an interesting tension. The other really interesting stuff I think that Agile raises about traditional marketing and advertising was a conversation I was having with someone at the Bath Scrum User Group last year, where I was talking about TV advertising and how actually you get very little data from it. If traditional actually on a TV in your room advertising, not on YouTube or whatever, or video on demand, you get very little data from it. About 3 months after the ad goes live, they do some sort of polling, focus groupy stuff, and you get a read on how it went down and the consideration change it might have caused and stuff like that. It takes a long time to get the data back, and the data's a bit kind of fluffy around the edges. And this person, I was telling them, saying we don't really get a lot of data out of TV. They just looked at me in all seriousness and said, well, why are you doing TV then? And I was like, I don't know. I'm really not sure why we're doing TV. If we don't actually know what it does, why are we doing it? And for me, the interesting stuff here is, if you take an agile approach to marketing, should you still be doing big bang, big money TV stuff? Or should you do loads and loads and loads of small YouTube videos, see which ones take off, and the ones that take off you make bigger and you do more with, and eventually they become your TV, having grown organically and iteratively over time, rather than starting with that big bang thing at the top and then working down. One thing agile marketing is brilliant at, though, is content marketing. I think content marketing. Content marketing is a really big buzzword at the moment in marketing, but it's been around for ages. This is The Michelin Guide, the Michelin Guide, the restaurant guide in France, it was invented as a way of selling tyres because Michelin were making really, really good quality tyres, and they kind of shot themselves in the foot because the tyres were so good quality, they weren't really wearing out and they weren't selling as many. And they're like, man, we've made a great product and no one's going to need to buy it at any point. So they thought, well, how do we get people driving more? Because the more they drive, the more they wear their tyres out. So they created a restaurant guide so you could drive around and go to these different restaurants. And then eventually that span out into this huge other thing of being, this biggest restaurant guide, most important restaurant guide in the world. But it was essentially content marketing. It was giving people useful, informative bits of content that helped promote a certain brand or a certain product or get a certain product used more. And it still happens a lot now. Blogging, basically, and YouTube channels are content marketing. You give people useful bits of information, and every time they do it, they see who you are, they see your brand, that kind of thing. It's really huge. And you may have noticed that over the last few years, the internet is filled up with just awful content because everyone wants to do it, but not everyone is really great at content marketing. For me, Agile is superb at content marketing because of user stories. Typically, people, when they do content marketing, go, well, what do we kind of want to talk about as a brand? We're not really sure. When actually, if you write a user story for it, say, as a type of person, I want to do X so I can Y with a piece of content, you get some really, really great content out of it. And I've actually used this for generating content marketing, and it works really, really well. It's superb for it. Whether Agile works as well for Big Bang TV, don't know. But if you want to do content marketing, which is a big thing at the moment, then yeah, user stories absolutely superb for it. And Scrum works really well as well, actually, for it. Just for keeping, because you are constantly producing content. Content marketing typically doesn't have an end date. You are just constantly producing small amounts of value. Some of the other cultural issues with marketing and advertising, that you've met a marketer, I'm probably not particularly typical of them, but they're really bad at admitting failure. Their job is to talk about how great everything is. The product is superb, it's the best thing you've ever had, nothing's wrong with it, you must buy it. And that kind of becomes a way of life. Whether the industry attracts people who are like that, or it makes people like that by dint of what the industry is, I'm not sure. But if you try and get a marketer to admit that something's failed, they won't. They'll really struggle with it, and they'll get quite aggressive towards you if you try and go, that failed, that sucked, that was awful. I remember people saying to me, well, there's room for improvement, isn't there? And I was like, there's not room for improvement, it was awful, it didn't work. Let's not do it again. But that's really exciting. Let's be excited about the fact we now know that doesn't work, and let's try something else. For me, it's awesome that something's failed. They really don't, they just can't do it, really can't talk about it. And that, I think, is a really interesting cultural tension when you're talking to marketing people. If you go, right, we've done all these things and these failed, they'll kind of actually probably stop talking to you. I find in some instances it's a bit of a sensitive topic for them sometimes. But one I'm really keen to push. I think the more they embrace it, the more they'll get that it's an amazing thing, not a bad thing. Can anyone see the connecting thread in all of these? Are logos of sort of advertising and marketing agencies. Can anyone see what the connecting thread in them is? Font, no. No. That's an interesting. Go on. Oh well, I never. I'd never thought of that. I could be wrong. No. Yeah. 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 Oh, there would have been so many meetings about this. Seriously, that angle there, that'll have been years of work to work that one out, definitely. Now look at... No. I'll tell you. Sorry? Nearly. I'll tell you. Simpler than that? Yes, but mergers of... What it is they're all people. They're all the initials of people's names. And this, for me, I've actually got them written down because they amuse me somewhat. Where are we? So BBH, which is that one, is Bartle, Bogle, Hegarty, 3 people who came together to make an advertising agency. BMB is BT, McGuinness, Bungay. And the best one, AMVBBDO, is Abbott, Mead, Vickers, Batten, Barton, Durstein and Osborne. And And that's Rainey, Kelly Campbell, Rolf, Young and Rubicam. And there was Rainey, Kelly Campbell, Rolf. Mark Rolf is the only one who's still there, and then I think Young and Rubicam bought them. Saatchi and Saatchi, obviously. Actually, Saatchi and Saatchi was a great one because they started, get this right around, I'm pretty sure they started Saatchi and Saatchi and then got aggressively taken over in 1995. So the two Saatchi brothers went off and set up M&C Saatchi. They were, it's like, it's still their name. And for me, this is so indicative of the way marketing and advertising is, because it's all about the people, it's all about the name above the door. If you look at digital agencies, you don't really see this in digital agencies. I used to work on one in Bristol called Team Rubber, which is named after a block of rubber that a guy I was at university with had to present during an interview of a graduate job, and he didn't get the job, felt really bitter towards the block of rubber, and called his entire empire Team Rubber, and they're doing a £1 million turnover now, they're doing really well. But it's not their names, it wasn't Quigley Park House Golding. So yeah, this is really indicative for me that this is an industry predicated on people's opinions, on people being great, being that great person. And you know, if you look at how some of these agencies work, quite often the big important decisions will have to go up the hierarchy to the senior person whose name is in the logo somewhere, or surname is in the logo, for them to sign it off. Sign off is a really huge thing in marketing. It's all hierarchical, there's lots of sign off and stuff. And like I say, you don't see it in digital agencies. Facebook isn't called Zuckerberg, it's just called Facebook. Twitter isn't called, I should know who founded Twitter, but I don't, but isn't called whoever founded Twitter. It wasn't Mr. Twitter that founded it. So yeah, for me that's really, really indicative of the kind of the industry that it is, that it's all about people's names and about personal opinion, not about data and so forth. And that I think will have to change. Yeah, and using some of this data, it's interesting to see how marketers react to it. Because like I say, in one sense, there's too much of it. In one sense, the data has made everything really, really complex and actually quite difficult to deal with. But in another sense, I found doing some of this stuff that actually it's fascinating to see how people react to it. Because there's one instance where we're designing some A/B tests of some marketing assets. And we haven't really done A/B testing at that point. And I had to take it to someone senior to sign it off. And said, well, here's an A/B test, what do you think? And they went, well, the answer's A. I said, no, it's an A/B test. Could you sign off the A/B test that I'm going to run? And they're like, well, no, because the answer's A. Why are you running a test? It's A. And I was just like, well, you kind of miss what an A/B test is here. But obviously they were the opinion. They were the senior person. And they're used to going, well, here are the two choices, I choose this one. Rather than going, let's do both of them and see what the public choose, see what the data says. They react really oddly to this data because they've not really had to deal with it too much before. And I think, you know, they do focus groups. I'm being a bit unfair on them. There will be focus groups, there will be some feedback. They don't sit there completely oblivious to everything that's happening, but it's pretty small scale. And if you start showing them we've got 10 million impressions and this happened, they kind of don't work on that scale. It's much more, they'd rather sit in a focus group and watch 5 people in their target market, or what they think is their target market, talking about it for an hour. And another really interesting one for me is around co-location, because obviously written into the Agile Manifesto itself is co-location is a good thing. And I think actually that's fading away. I think the latest Status Scrum survey said that, I think 33% of people who responded said they were working in, to some degree, a non-co-located way, off the top of my head. So that's kind of fading away. But advertising and marketing, they're run by these big agencies, and generally big clients go to big agencies, pay them big money to do the advertising campaigns for them, and there's no co-location between the agency and the client. The agency will go into the client, will bring a team of, you know, very presentable people who will come in and talk enthusiastically about something, and ideally not let the client say a lot, because if the client starts asking questions it might fall apart. So just go, wow, it's amazing, and hope the client goes, brilliant, that sounds amazing, and then goes off and does something. There's no co-location between it. And like I say, it's not essential to have co-location in Agile, but for me it's an interesting tension. If you're doing Agile marketing, should you actually be insourcing your marketing? Should you at least be bringing these people closer into your business, into your teams, rather than letting them sit off in their advertising agencies and won't come in and see you once a week with their latest things? And the other interesting one, I really haven't got any data on this, but I've seen it so many times I suspect there's a trend here, is that actually with marketers, it's not about co-location, it's about availability. Because marketers love meetings, and this is where I'm getting a bit vague with it, but there's something about having meetings that they really enjoy in a way that I find software developers don't quite as much. Software developers will happily sit there and just do code and chat on IRC or talk to each other or whatever, but yeah, marketers will spend your entire day on conference calls and phone calls and meetings, and actually it kind of doesn't matter if you are co-located, because you're often just not there. You know, you can have a desk in the office, but actually you're out meeting clients, you're out doing this, you're out, when you do billboard advertising, people like to go and look at the billboard, and they'll go to the other end of the country to go and look at a billboard, go, yeah, that's a billboard right there, brilliant, yeah, that's the advert we did, isn't it, brilliant, yeah, that's, yeah, good, well done, yeah. Like, why? Just take a photo, just email it back to them. So actually availability, and I got this really badly when I first started product owning. I had that typical entry into Scrum where you kind of don't really get told what it is. You just get the phone and go, you're a product owner. Brilliant, thanks, I'll do that then. And then during the general election one year, we went off and did a whole load of video content and blogging and stuff. There was an election debate in Bristol, and we were based in Bristol, so we ran off and did loads of stuff there. And I was getting text messages from developers, getting a bit grumpy that I wasn't around as a product owner to answer questions, and I was kind of ignoring it, and got back to the office, and there was all hell broke loose. They were kind of queued up to say, right, that was awful, where were you? And I was like, well, I was out doing marketing-y stuff. That's what I do. And they were like, well, you know, you're a product owner, you need to be here. So yeah, the availability thing, I think, is a much bigger tension in marketing, potentially, than just actual physical co-location. You can have them in the same room, but actually, are they available to talk to you, and are they really engaged and listening when you are doing? And getting towards the end, the really other interesting one is customer involvement. And I think the first time I talked about this, someone fairly pointed out that actually customer involvement isn't all happy and lovely in the world of software development either. So customers don't just flock to get involved in your product and give you loads of really useful constructive feedback and regularly attend all your retrospect or your sprint reviews and so forth. So yeah, it's not easy in any industry. But I think there's some real tensions around customer involvement in marketing and advertising compared with software. First being kind of who is your customer? Say you're marketing kids' toys or you're marketing flowers. Is your customer the parent that buys the toy, or is it the kid that consumes the toy, that uses the toy? Is the customer for the flowers the guilty boyfriend who buys them, or the girlfriend who receives them and feels better about him as a result? Where is the customer? Quite often in software, the customer is fairly obviously the end user. You may have sort of stakeholders in the way of that cause problems sometimes, but fundamentally you want a user to use the software and look at how they're using it. With marketing, you're not really sure who the customer is, and it's really unclear, certainly in the instance of kids' toys, where the parent could be consuming the marketing and then acting on it, but then actually quite often the adverts are aimed at kids to go and pester their parents. So the kids are the consumer, but they're not the purchaser, so who is... That all gets a bit unclear and a bit fuzzy. Another bigger issue as well, to a degree, is why would customers want to get involved in marketing? It's not in their interest to go, you know what, I really want to help you sell me stuff. You don't get out of bed in the morning and go, right, I really want to help that brand who make millions of pounds to make even more money for no apparent reason. There's no payback for the customer. And quite often what you're doing in marketing, and actually it's interesting, some marketers have, I think all marketers have red lines about what they will and won't work in, and I certainly do. There's certain industries I just won't do anything with if I'm doing sort of marketing communication stuff. But quite often what you want them to do is actually against their best interests. If you're marketing cigarettes, you couldn't say you probably could in the 1950s when this first started out, but now you couldn't say that, you know, we're helping them buy cigarettes because it's delivering them value and it's helping them to be better. You're fundamentally getting them to do something that is bad for them. So how do you get the customer involved in that? Why would the customer get involved in that? Do you even want the customer involved in that? Because if the customer got involved in it, they might go, well, you need to put the warnings bigger because I know this is killing me, so let's make the warnings bigger on the packet. And you're kind of like, well, not really, no, because it's not going to sell as much. So that, again, is a really, really interesting tension around customer involvement. I'm not sure it's been fully worked through yet. I'm not sure anyone's fully kind of looked at how customers get involved in it. One angle, obviously, is data. You can get loads and loads of data. You'd be amazed how much data advertisers have on you just from your using the internet and from you having logged into Facebook. You could just scrape data out of Facebook. Anytime a display ad loads on a page on a big website, it's probably pulling through all your demographic details into a database. Not you saying who you personally are, but you could say, we know 67% of people who looked at the advert are men and they're of this certain age and blah, blah, blah. So data could be used as customer feedback. You can say, you know, this one's performing better, this one's selling more. You've got all that data you didn't have in the traditional marketing model. But then I think you start to lose something. If all your customers are a data, you start to get, I think, a few ethical issues about it. You know, are people just numbers, or are they actually people? If advertising and marketing is fundamentally a very creative kind of activity, then does data start to strip all that creativity out of it and that human angle out of it and just make it about, you know, what's that Nirvana track, radio-friendly unit shifter? They just called a track that because it was just about selling stuff. So yeah, data potentially fixes it, but potentially causes new issues as well. Again, no one's really worked this one through. So where next? I mean, I wrote this. This was version 1 deliberately. There'll be version 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, hopefully. There's already a chapter I need to add on servant leadership in here, which will be quite interesting in that sort of context. The one thing that is happening, I think, is that obviously everyone is using Scrum because that's just what people do. Scrum is Agile, Agile is Scrum in some people's minds. And as a result, no one's really tested some of the other frameworks for this. And I think some of the other frameworks might actually be more difficult because they're kind of more software heavy. Scrum is actually quite agnostic about not necessarily just being about software. But no one's particularly tested the different frameworks. I've used Scrum. I kind of, without even thinking, just went, well, let's do Agile marketing with Scrum because just Scrum. When actually it'd be really interesting to test some of the other ones. Some of the other practices, pair programming, that's really, really good in software. How would you do that in marketing? You're not programming anything, but how would you bring two people together to do stuff in a more collaborative, iterative, quick kind of way? It's interesting. And also finding out where this works and where this doesn't work. Does it just work in content marketing? It might just work in content marketing, that's fine. It's brilliant at content marketing, I love it for that. But maybe it doesn't work beyond that. Does it fundamentally start challenging the entire advertising industry and marketing industry and go, actually, let's not do TV anymore, let's just do YouTube, let's do really small things? How does this change? And I think what's happening is, go right back to that thing at the start of the Oreos tweet and people actually actively calling that agile marketing. I think people are getting that something needs to change. People are understanding that it's all gone a bit weird, it's all gone a bit complex and fast-paced and uncertain, and it's not really the marketing advertising landscape they understood before. So they're getting it, but they're not really getting how it might be done. And would Agile work for it? Is Agile right? I personally think it is. I think everything I've set out here kind of shows that it would work really well. But it's going to change a lot of stuff. It's going to change a lot of names over the door who've made entire careers by having opinions. If you go, I really don't care what your opinion is anymore because I've got this data and move on a bunch of tests and it says this, that kind of makes that person redundant a bit, and they're not going to like that because they've made a lot of money having opinions. It's their raison d'etre. So, yeah, there's an interesting collision. It's either going to be a really, really gentle collision as the two merge together and gently do stuff, or it's just going to blow up. So I've written a book, I'm ready to go. Whatever happens, I can write about it. Be fine. But yeah, I don't know. Genuinely don't know. It's all very, very new, but I think kind of interesting. So yeah, if you want to read more about it, shameless plug and link and so forth. I'm actually making the book available as a free download. The printed copy, I think you've got to buy for like £6-7 or something, just because it costs money to print stuff. But if you want to download it for free, just download it and read it and send me feedback, because I really want feedback on it. I had loads of people download it and not send me feedback yet, and I kind of want to email them and go on, like, what do you think? Even if you hate it, even if I just want to do a survey where I say, how many pages did you get in before you deleted it? Because that'd be really interesting to know which bit annoyed them. The only person that's given me loads of feedback is my mum, and she loved it. So yeah, she's going to though. I'm not really particular. I mean, it's lovely, but yes. I need people who hate it. I need opinions. So yes, do download it. But yeah, that's my thoughts. I'm happy to take questions as well.